Welcome to A Plant Life Cycle. This video is about pollination and fertilization. Pollination. Before a flower can begin to produce seeds or grow fruit, it must be pollinated. Pollen is a powdery substance that we find on the anther of a flower. Pollen contains the male cells of the plant. So let's have a look at these three flowers. First of all, on the lily, this is where the anther is. These bits here carry all of the pollen. Then we have the anther on the hibiscus, is these little yellow blobs. They're supported by the filament, which is these little hair-like structures. So the anthers have the pollen on the yellow bit. And then we have the passion fruit flower. The anthers are here. There's 5 of them around the outside of the passion fruit flower, and the pollen is actually underneath them, hanging upside down on the anther of the passion fruit flower. The pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther of one flower to the stigma, the sticky stigma, of another flower of the same species. So let's have a look at those 3 flowers again, and we can locate the stigmas. So first we have the stigma up here of the oriental lily. Just on top here it's a bit sticky and wet, and the pollen can be transferred on top of the stigma. The hibiscus, these parts here are the stigma. Sometimes they look different from plant to plant, but they generally have the same structure. So the stigma on top there is a little bit sticky and pollen can stick to it. And over on the passion flower, these 3 purple bits are the stigma, and there's a sticky bit on the underside. It hangs upside down, just like the anther pollen was hanging upside down on that one. Okay, so pollinators. For the transfer of pollen to occur, almost all flowering plants rely on pollinators. And pollinators are attracted to a flower by their colourful petals and their sweet-smelling nectar. Pollinators are animals, they're usually insects, who seek the sweet nectar from the flower and spread the pollen from flower to flower while they feed on the lovely sweet nectar. It's just like a sugary drink. So let's have a look. Here we've got 2 flowers, and they're being pollinated by a bee. So we can see that the bee visited this flower, collected some pollen, and then flew to the next flower to feed on the nectar and left a bit of pollen stuck to the stigma. Bees are our most prolific pollinators. They're essential pollinators, and they visit flowers, thousands of flowers every day, collecting pollen as they go. Not just insects pollinate plants, sometimes birds can pollinate plants. This is a hummingbird that has a well-designed beak to go into these long flowers to collect the nectar at the very end. But it doesn't have to be birds or insects. It could be any other animal or different types of insects like a butterfly. Fertilization is the next process. So once a pollen grain has been transferred from the anther to the stigma of another flower, it travels down the style to meet the ovule. Once the pollen grain and the ovule meet, the flower has been fertilized. And after fertilization, the ovary will start to swell into a fruit, and the ovules will become seeds. That's it for fertilization and pollination. Thank you.